Welcome to the Sandy and Toddcast, a podcast about all things strange, unusual, and a little bit odd. Why? Because that's how we roll. What are we talking about this time? Check it out. Hello, Todd.
How's it going, Sandy?
It's good. It's good. Another week to bring our love and our fun and all of our weird paranormal craziness to the world.
That's exactly right. We're actually, we mentioned this on a live broadcast that we did on Facebook earlier this week. As we're sitting down and recording this, we went live. And we mentioned that we're going to take a couple of weeks off soon, just so that we can revamp a couple of things and add some things to what we do every week.
Yeah, it's funny what a learning process it is. Now, this is episode 14. We're going to do one more episode next week, and then we're going to take just a quick break. We're going to actually put up a few best of episodes with some funny stuff that we've done over the past 15 episodes, just to keep everybody having a little bit of fun with us, and then we'll be back for season 2, and it's such a learning process. We started out, when I look at where we are now as opposed to where we were when we began, it is quite the learning process, and we're having such a good time with it. We thought, let's expand it, let's do something more with it, and we just found this new technology that we absolutely love, so we'll be doing some more Facebook Lives. If you are not following us on Facebook, make sure that you do, the Sandy and Toddcast, and all kinds of good fun stuff coming your way soon, very, very soon.
Really excited about it, and what we're trying to do is give you a little bit more content more often and make it a little different with some video and stuff that I guess people might be kind of keen on getting and maybe, paying a couple of bucks a month in order for us to do it. So we'll see how it goes. It's
kind of a peek into our lives and what we do, and you hear people all the time, you listen to them, but maybe you don't know us. And you want to know us, and we're giving you the opportunity to hang out with us a little bit more in a more personal way and get to know us a little bit more and see how funny looking Todd is.
I am kind of funny looking now that I look at myself and of course the day that we record this, I didn't do anything with my beard or my hair, so I look like absolute. And on the other flip side, you finally did something with yourself.
There's how many weeks, Todd, have I said to you, oh, it's just you. I don't care what I look like today. I don't care what I look like. And today I finally actually put a little makeup on. And but don't worry, your hair is on point. It is on point this week,
great,
as usual.
Great,
as
great.
usual. So we have a busy show today and a fun show. We've got weird news, as usual. And we've also got a great question that somebody asked you last week about the paranormal world. We both kind of briefly discussed it, and we both have opinions on it, and so that'll be fun to talk about. And then I did an investigation back in November at the Angry Garlic in Baldwinsville, New York, and over the past several episodes, I've sort of interjected a little bit of my experience here and there, but I haven't really been able to say too much about it because the episode hasn't been out yet. I belong to a show called Ghosts, Pubs, and Grub. They have their own Facebook page. We are on Facebook. You can see the episode there. But there's so much more that happened, and I've been really wanting to talk about it for the longest time. The episode is finally out. I was able to talk to the owners of the restaurant and sort of fill them in on all of the goings on there, more so than what the episode said. And now I can actually talk about it. So we're going to discuss that today, too.
Excellent. Sounds like a lot of fun. Where do we start?
Have you thought of any way to make fun of me yet this week?
Yeah, but and we'll talk about this a little bit later on. I'm going to behave this week. Okay. I got into a little bit of trouble earlier this week with her, and so I'm just going to behave today.
We did. We rarely argue. I mean, it's just not heard of for us to argue with each other, and we actually got into an argument the other night, which in and of itself, looking back on it, is very funny. Like, now I look at it with, like, just total humor.
We've really argued pretty much like twice since we've known each other, and both of them were like, we weren't necessarily on different pages.
No.
We were just looking at different parts of the page, and you were seeing it your way, and I was seeing it my way. And yet, to be honest with you, in the long run, it was the same goddamn page in the book.
It was. And we're both kind of stubborn. Just a little bit.
Me.
We're both
Not
stubborn.
Me.
And so, but in the end, it all worked out because we have gifts in our life. and gifts solve every problem known to man.
Does Santa come?
Yeah. I don't know what I would do if we didn't have gifts to communicate with. Sort of like talking.
Those kind of gifts. I thought you meant GIFTS. I'm thinking, where the fuck are the gifts?
That's why I giggled sort of awkwardly because I didn't know what in the world you were talking about. And I figured,
we're the only people in the world who argue, and then it ends up being okay because we start responding in gifts, and then everything
It's how we make up. It's how we make up. There's no make-up sex involved. We just send gifts to each other.
God, that just went really badly.
Come on.
Badly.
Ugh, just the thought. Well, that's why we have gifts, thank God.
All right.
So, anyways, it's time to talk about the question that you got last week.
We're going to do that?
Yeah, let's do that.
All right. Let's do the question. I call this segment, Hey, what do you think about this? A friend of mine, Jesse, who I've known, he's a radio guy as well and enjoys the paranormal. And he is somebody who's watched Haunted State and listens to the podcast and all that kind of stuff. He says, backstory, my girlfriend and I late last week went to explore some of her family history while on a trip to northern Minnesota. Her great-grandfather was a trustee in starting a small community in that area, as well as part founder in the Greyhound bus lines. All right. Mm-hmm. Now, here's the event. Upon talking to her last night, she kept having a familiar smell off and on all evening in her house. You know, you get that whiff of stuff once in a while.
Yes.
A few seconds at a time in intervals of like 5 to 7 minutes, and then it would go away. After trying to identify the scent, it dawned on her that it was the scent of an old garment brush that she had from her great-grandfather, which was covered and packed away upstairs. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So she checked the item upon recollection of the specific smell, and despite it being wrapped like always and untouched for years, it was without scent for the very first time in her life. She repacked it, returned downstairs, and continued to have the smell waft in and out throughout the remainder of the evening. Mm-hmm. Now, as of the next day, when he wrote this to me, it was no longer happening. So his question was this: in the paranormal, is it possible to invoke a scent from the past and possibly connect with our recent trip, like this great-grandfather trying to communicate? And I'm going to let you respond, and then I'll tell you how I responded.
All right. My firm belief is that the people that we love, their memory, their energy is always with us. All we have to do is think of them, ask them to come to us. I think they're always with us. But I think that there are certain things in our lives that sort of trigger their wanting more so to connect with us. And when you take a trip like that, or you do something that sort of triggers more emotions than you would usually have, we all go through grief. We all deal with it in our way. And we start to move on. We never totally get past it, but we start to move on. And every day we think about them, we talk about them. But when there's something out of the ordinary that sort of triggers that connection and that emotion, I think that it's very possible that there is some sort of communication going on there. I think it's intelligently a communication there. I think that, was it her grandfather?
Yeah, great-grandfather, possibly.
Her great-grandfather. I think that there's some sort of trigger there that enabled him to be able to let her know, hey, I'm there. I mean, she has an object that belonged to him. And we all know that sometimes energy can connect to an object in and of itself. Even if there's no history between the people. But now you think about it as a family member, I think that it's highly possible and most likely that that's what happened, which is a wonderful thing.
Yeah. He said that it literally happened for hours and hours and hours, no rhythm or rhyme to the timing. It just kept showing up. He said, I surmise that it was Grandpa's way of saying hello and thanks for caring about the heritage.
There you go.
And then he said, do you think the spirit was brought back with us or simply sought her out? And I said, and my response to all this was, I think that he was right and you were right going there and learning about it and kind of paying homage to it. Didn't necessarily bring his spirit back with them, but connected with that spirit, that energy. And so it was the energy, the spirit, the grandfather's way, great-grandfather's way of saying thank you.
Yeah, I totally agree. Think about it. You are, by going there and learning, you are inviting them to connect with you.
Right.
I don't feel like spirits or energy just is always stuck in one place. You know, I don't know that, I don't think that necessarily he followed them back, but I think it allowed that connection so that if you're thinking about someone and you're learning and you care enough to learn about them, and you are essentially inviting them in. And I think it's a wonderful way that her great-grandfather connected with her.
Great little
really
visit. Yeah, I mean, and I try to think about, like, I've had experiences with my mother who's passed away when I kind of least expected it.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, I'll tell a quick story. I went on a trip this past summer, and I ended up at a shrine, a Catholic shrine. And Catholicism is not my thing, okay? I'm interested in it,
right?
Almost from a spooky standpoint, because I think there's a lot of weird stuff in the Catholic religion that I'm not going to get into today. But my mom was Catholic,
mm-hmm.
and was a practicing Catholic for the latter part of her life before she passed away. And I went to the shrine, and it was interesting to me. I'm interested in the saints and the statues and all that kind of stuff. That stuff interests me.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in a location where they kind of have this walk of the Stations of the Cross.
Right.
I think they call it the 12 Stations of the Cross or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand all that, but it's different places where Jesus apparently took the trip with the cross. And at any rate, I was sitting there thinking to myself, my mom would really, really enjoy this. And she was there. It was it was a smell, it was a feeling. She was there. And I immediately started crying.
Yeah.
You know, so I think that happens. I think that when we remember people in our lives who are no longer with us, it's kind of their way of saying, thank you. I am here with you all the time.
It's an invitation.
Right.
I'm obviously aware of that story, and it moved me just as much because you can invite them subconsciously. You know, your subconscious can invite them in, but just the mere act of thinking of them, of paying homage to them, it invites them to connect with you. And I was told one time, and I believe this, that they can come and go. A lot of people, naysayers, would say, oh, well, you know, how do they just get invited? They can come and go. They have free will. I was told that. You know, I was told my grandparents, and this woman who is a medium, she described my grandparents to a T, and she said, they're with me every time I think of them. They come and go. All you have to do is think about them, and you're inviting them to connect with you. And a lot of times they will come and they will connect with you. And it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful story. It sort of teaches us that, you know, maybe our time here, that's not the end. And that it can go on and that we can continue. I
think too, you know, for each person, it's not going to be the same. Right. So don't expect every time you think about that loved one that you're going to get a whiff, or you're going to get something, you're going to see something, or you're going to hear something. No. Sometimes it's just a natural feeling of being at ease, having thought of that. And that might be all you get, but that is a good enough reaction. It's sort of, you're right. It's not like you're going to get a, quote, miracle every time that you think of someone. I think about my grandparents every day. Something will happen. I've told you stories about my grandparents. You know, I know that they're here. I just don't smell something. Nothing moves on the countertop. It's not that kind of invitation. So that's why I feel, even my dog Jack, I told you the story either last week or the week before, how I think I've seen him in my studio here, because there are so many memories of him here, and I talk to him and I think of him.
that's what makes it even more special when something like that does happen, because it shows you just how much of a connection you seem to have made.
Right.
So it's a wonderful story. It's a wonderful thing to happen.
And thanks to him for allowing us. And let me see. I think I already closed it out, but his girlfriend, thanks to her for allowing us to share that story, all that kind of stuff. Because that's good stuff. When you get to share that kind of stuff, I think we talked about it a lot, and it goes back into the situation that as investigators of paranormal stuff, because we present stuff on TV, on Facebook to a client, it's always great to have that video or that audio, right? It's great to have it, but it's not necessary. No. It's not necessary. If you make a connection and nobody else knows you've made that connection, it doesn't fucking matter. All that matters is the situation you've been in. Your experience, that personal experience, is enough.
And what you can take away from it.
Absolutely.
What you're personally taking away from it. I love hearing other people's stories. You and I have had 1,000,001 experiences in our lives. We're no spring chickens. We've been through it all. We're both empaths. We both have abilities. And we've been through a lot. We can talk about our experiences for days. But it's so wonderful to hear the experiences of other people and how it's made them feel. And the fact that they're so curious about what it could mean is very encouraging to me, because I think more people should be open to understanding that it's not tunnel vision.
Right.
It's not all black and white, that there's so much more to life than just getting up every morning, eating your breakfast, going to work, coming home, eating dinner, watching TV, and going to bed. There's
Even though it feels that way a lot of our lives. I mean, it really does.
It sure does.
Yeah.
It does. It does. But there is more to it. And I think that's one of the reasons that doing investigations makes me feel so alive, because it wakes me up to the fact that there is so much more going on than what our normal daily lives are all about.
Yeah.
So,
and I would just say this, if anybody wants to, has a question or wants to share their story, I'm more than willing to share as many stories as we get and answer as many questions as we get. So if our listeners, our viewers want to send us that stuff, we have an email for that. I don't want to give it out because I'll probably get it wrong, so I'll let you do that.
I'll give it out.
They can reach out to us, email. They can reach out to us here on Facebook, or, message us directly. It's fine.
Email us at the Sandy and Toddcast at gmail.com, and you can message us on Facebook. We're always around, and we'd love to hear your stories. I would definitely love to hear your stories. And if you have a story, you can specially request that Todd voice it as BeJesus. That's always an available option.
Should I do a little bit of this story?
I miss BeJesus. He hasn't been around in a few weeks.
Let me see what I got here. It's going to take me a moment to find it again. Because I'm totally not prepared. Here it is. Okay, so my girlfriend and I late last week went to explore some of her family history while on a trip to northern Minnesota. Her great-grandfather was a trustee in starting a small community in that area, as well as the... fuck that.
You sort of sounded... You sort of went into Charlton Heston in the Ten Commandments at one point.
Really?
Yeah, it was sort of like that booming... the Ten Commandments.
I need to get more into it and just do the southern voice for BeJesus.
Yeah, that's BeJesus.
All right,
There's
all right.
BeJesus.
All right, we'll do that again sometime.
I love that. Thank you so much for asking that question, because it was a fantastic question.
And now, weird news.
All right, Todd, a couple of stories this week that I didn't even tell you about.
Oh,
this
gosh.
I love. I know. I wanted to keep these a surprise for you. This has been going viral. There's a home for sale in Massachusetts that's warning potential buyers that it's not haunted. Okay. Now, on top of the for sale sign with the name of the broker and their contact information, there is indeed a little sign that says not haunted in big red letters. The funny part is, to add to the story, the real estate agency says that they don't know anything about it or how it got there. The consensus is that the sign is just a prank, maybe played by a ghost with a sense of humor. That's the joke. Now, that got me thinking about haunted houses and the sale of haunted houses. I looked it up and I found a little bit of information. There are only 4 states that deal with paranormal activity in real estate disclosure. That's New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, and Minnesota. Those 4 states. In Connecticut, Delaware, Georgia, New Hampshire, New Jersey, and South Carolina, sellers have to disclose a death on the property only if asked. They don't have to necessarily say that it's haunted, but in the first 4 states, you have to disclose that you have a haunted house before you actually sign the paperwork and sell the house.
That's interesting.
Yes, it's very interesting. And the groundbreaking case happened in New York State. It was very famous. It was very, very famous. It was many years ago. I remember the story. I don't remember a lot about it. I looked it up a little bit to get some information, but it was in 1991. It was Stambovsky versus Ackley. And everybody calls it the Ghostbusters ruling. That's how it's commonly known. It was a house in Nyack, New York, which is on Long Island. It held that if you have a house that you previously advertised to the public is haunted, you have to disclose that to any potential buyers of the house. Now, in this case, the owner had a few articles written in the local paper about the house, and they were in Reader's Digest. It was even included in a haunted walking tour in the town. The house went up for sale. The person who bought it found out about the haunting after the fact and took the owners to court because they didn't want the house anymore. So that was a groundbreaking ruling.
Was there any indication, though, that the new owners were having any experiences?
I couldn't find anything about it. But I don't know if, maybe they had activity and then somebody said, hey, the neighbor said, hey, that house is haunted. That's been this and that's been that, and it freaked them out. I don't know what the circumstances were, but it set quite a precedent. Or
they couldn't pay their freaking mortgage and just wanted a way out.
Especially down on Long Island. That's how you say
That's what they used to say about the Amityville horror story, was that they couldn't pay the mortgage and were making up crazy stories about it. I wonder if the Amityville horror had anything to do with that, too.
I don't know. It's interesting. And this was many, many years ago, and this law has been in effect for that long. I thought that was so interesting that you have to tell somebody your house is haunted. Now, I would probably do it anyways, just because I couldn't not tell somebody that. but I'm going to come back and haunt you. And
too late, you already are.
So that was really crazy. I don't know if it was probably just a prank or, somebody messing around, but it did lead me to look up the actual real Ghostbusters ruling. So pretty cool stuff.
I thought you were going to tell the story about the location that was for sale that you showed me online, where it was, remember the house that looked like a graveyard and had the coffins and shit in it?
Yes.
And all the crucifixes and the black and purple paint?
Out.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about that really briefly, because that creeped me out. This house, it looked kind of neat from the outside, I thought. The front of it was a gray house with like black trim and stuff. It just looked neat, a small house. You go inside and there's coffins and there's crosses, but then there's some football memorabilia mixed in.
But that doesn't make any sense.
That was really funny.
It was either death or it was football. That was about all they had.
Death or did you ever hear of a comedian named Eddie Izzard?
Mm-mm.
He's hilarious. He's from the UK, and he used to do this one thing called Cake or Death, and he was like Queen Elizabeth or something, and it was hilarious. And that's what it made me think of. It's like football or death. And it's a crazy, crazy play. And in the backyard.
Yeah, the backyard actually had like gravestones and stuff. I mean, it was just weird. The garage had a big spider web painted on it. The bedroom, I mean, you want to talk about weird. The bedroom had crosses and shit, okay? But then it also had ceiling mirrors. And the bed
they were angled on the wall.
And I don't know if you noticed, but the bed looked like it was pretty fucking heavy duty for some other activities. And there was only 3 colors in the entire house, really. There was gray, black, and purple. And that was it. Everything was one of those colors or a shade of those colors, and that was it.
And what did you ask? You said, what kind of real estate agent would allow that to be shown that way?
But you don't, and you've seen this. You look at houses and people have their pictures taken of their house for the websites and stuff like that. And people can't even do the fucking dishes before the pictures are taken. You know what I'm saying? Those houses are messy.
Yes.
But then can you imagine like somebody picking up the phone and going, "Hello, so-and-so real estate, how can I help you?" "Well, we'd like to list a house." "Well, great, I'll come over and see it." And you get over there and you're like, "I have to list this?"
Isn't your job as a real estate agent to tell people we need to do this, we need to do this, this will sell your house
better? A lot of people won't listen to a fucking thing you say.
No, and I will say that the house was immaculately clean.
It was nice, and actually everything like the kitchen was really nice. Other than the cabinets were a deep purple color, and everything else was gray. But I mean, it had nice high-end finishes. It had the mirrors on the ceiling in the bedroom. So like, if you're into that shit, I mean, it was.
You're ready to go. I don't know. I said it to you, and I'm like,
the chains and shit too, or what? Can I get those for extra? Can I write that into the offer? I want the washing machine and the chains
and the SD. What is that?
BDSM.
BDSM. I can't even say it. Does it come with all the BDSM gear? 50 Shades? I don't know. It's just a cross between crazy sex and death. I have no idea what's going on.
We do have an offer, but you have to throw in the BDSM bed. A deal? Okay, great. I'll let them know.
We have a winner. They had a beautiful backyard bar, though.
Yeah, they did.
It was beautiful. I don't know. Their tool shed was like a morgue or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
It was just too funny.
That was good.
Just too funny. And moving on, we did this a few weeks ago, and I just wanted to bring it up. There is a website called cultofweird.com that you go on, and then you've sort of gotten me going on it now because it's so interesting. They have this new tool on there called Deep Nostalgia, and I just wanted to mention this to people. You can upload old photos and they can animate them for you.
Yeah.
We did it. I actually took a picture that I had of me with my grandma when she was in her probably mid-40s and I was, maybe 3 or 4. Maybe she was younger than that. And we were at the beach in one of those photo booths. And I didn't know what I was getting myself into because it animated her. And it brought back so many memories. I started crying. And then I did your great-grandma.
No, my grandmother.
No, your grandma. I keep getting that wrong. Your grandma. And it animated her as well. And it's just really weird. But the reason I wanted to tell you about it is because we talk about Ed Gein a lot here. And eventually you're going to do an Ed Gein Twisted Towns.
Yep.
But there actually is a deep nostalgia already done of Ed Gein on cultofweird.com, and it's so creepy. So I just want everybody to check it out because it's very weird.
It's cool, but it's also weird because this is what everybody turns out to look like. So let's say there's a picture of me and I look like this. Okay? This is what it ends up being like. That's kind of what happens with it, and everybody looks just a little off.
I will say this: my grandmother was fairly close, but they sort of look doe-eyed, like they're on like so many tranquilizers that it is very, very strange.
Yeah.
Cultofweird.com makes sense for this one, but just check it out. I implore you to check it out because it's actually really funny. Do it for yourself. If you don't want to do it for a loved one who's passed, just do your own picture.
Do it for yourself. If you want to see yourself look a little off, go ahead and just do it. Yeah.
It just looks like somebody in an insane asylum with tons of meds, pumped into their system. So anyways, that is I almost said that's Cult of Weird. We are the Cult of Weird here on the Sandy and Toddcast.
That was weird news.
So Todd, I had an investigation back in November that was my favorite investigation I've ever done, but it was so mind-blowing and so draining for me that it took me a long time to sort of work through everything. Now, a little bit about me. I am a pretty strong empath, but I also have a few different abilities, sort of psychic abilities. I may have more, but I don't really want to know about them at this point in my life. And I am clairsentient and claircognizant, which means that, and those are the ones I've confirmed, that clairsentience sort of like empath on crack. It's just I can feel a spirit, I can feel energy when it's with me, when it's next to me. I can feel whether it's male or female. I can connect with it in that way. I can feel its emotions. I can feel sadness. I can feel happiness, contentment. And also, I have this ability to just kind of know things. Things will come to me that we've talked about this before. You've had these types of abilities too in your lifetime where something will come to you, you'll picture something, or you just don't even know. You second guess yourself because you don't know why you know it. You don't know. You sort of think, wow, what an imagination I have. And I've learned how to trust myself over the past few months where I've done more and more of these. And so it was a big investigation. It's a restaurant in Baldwinsville. I don't like to know a lot about a location before I go there. I like to maybe know just some general stuff, but I don't like to know a lot about it. I'd rather walk through it and get an impression of where the energy is strongest and what's going on before I find out what experiences people are having and all of that kind of stuff. It just helps me to be able to connect a little bit more with whatever's going on. So we walked in. All I knew of this location was that it used to be a hotel. It was 1850s. This hotel was built. It was the Seneca House Hotel, Baldwinsville, New York. It used to be 3 stories, and that building suffered 3 fires over the years. I didn't know when the fires were. I didn't know if anybody had died. I didn't know anything about it, just that there were fires. We have a great lady named Sue who does some research for us, and she had told me before we got there that I should ask about a Mr. and Mrs. White. That's all I knew. So we walk in and we had some dinner and we did a walkthrough. And my first impressions were definitely that the bar area was very active and there's a little dining room off to the left. And I felt like that was very active. I found out after the fact that those were the places where most of the upstairs activity was going on. I had a dream a couple of nights before of a lady in a blue dress. I have dreams. I have weird dreams. So it didn't really register with me at the time. And so I kind of put it aside and didn't think about it. When we started the investigation, after the owners had left, everybody had left, it was just us. I was asked, where should we start? And I said, over in the little area where we ate, the little dining room. And there was a clear EVP. And the reason I mention this is because I think that intelligent spirits know when there are people present who are open.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I really believe they know that and they're drawn to them. I think that's why I get so much activity, because of the fact that they know. That they can communicate with me. So there was a very clear EVP that said, she's coming. I didn't hear this until after the investigation. And a lot of times what happens, because I don't necessarily see a spirit or audibly hear a spirit any more than someone else would hear a spirit, I have to take my feelings, my emotions, and maybe after the fact do some research or look at the evidence to piece everything together to make a story out of it. We went into this room and we sat down, and I run my recorder through the entire investigation. I don't do EVP sessions. I run the recorder because I've gotten some of my best evidence when we weren't doing EVP sessions. I sat down with my group, and at one point I asked if Mr. and Mrs. White were there. And after the fact, there was a very clear EVP that came out that said, yes, ma'am. It was a male voice, very clear. And what's interesting about this is that I found out after the fact that there was a fire in 1910, that Mr. and Mrs. White were 2 of the 3 casualties in that fire. And yes, ma'am is a response that a gentleman would give to a lady who asked a question around the turn of the century. So it all of the pieces of that puzzle came together after the fact. And the claims in that part of the building were that menus would come off the dresser or the table, that they would come in the next day and chairs would be moved. They would come in and napkins would be moved, placemats would be moved. And I feel as if Mr. and Mrs. White definitely there, definitely strong in that room. And I feel like they're just looking for some sort of acknowledgement that they're there. There's nothing negative coming from them. I think it's just they were a young couple. They were from Seneca Falls, New York. He had been working. I found all of this out after the fact. He had been working in Baldwinsville for a few weeks. He was about to go home, and his wife came out to visit him on that Sunday to see him before he came home. And that's when the fire occurred. So if she had not come out to visit him, she would not have passed away. She would not have been caught in the fire. And it's been very emotional for me to find all of this stuff out because I connected with them. Right. I actually connected with them, and it makes a big difference. They were young. They were 28 and 29 years old. They were a young couple, and they lost their lives. Now, I'll divulge a little bit more about that story as we move through the restaurant, but it was pretty sad for me. Although, interestingly enough, I didn't feel sadness from them. I felt almost like this is where they are, and they're together. And so I think the fact that they are together sort of negates some of that sadness for them. You're talking intelligent energy, Todd. This is an intelligent energy.
Right.
We then moved out to the bar, and I had found out at one point that there was a couple sitting at the end of the bar at one point, and the gentleman kept getting touched on his shoulder, and he kept looking at his wife like, what is going on? And she had no idea what he was talking about. They told the people who work at the restaurant about it, and they said, oh yeah, we have some ghosts. And so I took everybody down to the end of the bar, and we were sitting there, and all of a sudden, I started talking about the lady in the blue dress. I had a feeling that the lady in the blue dress somehow had something to do with this bar. And we sat there, and we all had our instruments. We had EMF meter, we had an EDI meter, we had my recorder, we had another EMF meter that Bill was holding that lights up and makes noise when there's high EMF. It was all there. And I started talking to the spirit and saying, are you the lady in the blue dress that I connected with the other night? And the equipment started to move a little bit and go off. And the more and more I talked to her, the more she presented herself. And I could feel her at one point standing right next to me. There's a difference between feeling cold and feeling spirit energy. Right. There's a difference. It's a chill. You feel a chill. It's not just, oh, I'm cold. You can be in a cold room and feel colder when there's a spirit near you. It's different. And I could feel her, and all of a sudden the name Annie came into my head. And I said, I just got the name Annie. I don't know why, but I did. And as soon as I said that name, the equipment went absolutely bonkers at the exact time I said that name. And it was fascinating to watch, because a lot of times you'll see on ghost shows, paranormal shows, that investigators will get very excited when their EMF or their meter reads a 0.2, yeah, or a 0.4 or a 0.6. I tend to get EMF meter readings in the 10s, the 30s, the 60s. It's not uncommon, and that's what happened here. We were getting readings of 48. It would go to 12. It would go to 21.4. It was fluctuating, which says a lot to me, and I'll tell you why. Because we tried to debunk this. We tried very hard to debunk this, even though it was pretty difficult to explain away why every piece of equipment was at its highest limit, going crazy at once. We thought that it could possibly be the compressor behind the bar that kicks on every once in a while. The only problem with that is, Dennis and I had a discussion about it. The only problem with that is that when a compressor kicks on, it's going to go to its full capacity. It's not going to fluctuate. And even if it were to fluctuate, it wouldn't fluctuate wildly. It's doing its job. It's at its full capacity. So it's going to stay at 75, for example. It's not going to be 75, 12, 68, 22. It's just not going to do that. That's not reality for a piece of machinery that they don't have any issues with. They never had any issues with. It's just not going to happen. So that was a pretty amazing point in the investigation. And that was in the beginning of the investigation. So those were two big things that were going on. I'm pretty convinced that this female spirit was more than likely Annie. I get the impression that she was young, maybe in her early to mid 20s. I think she's sort of playful. I think that's why people feel the touching down there and the taps and the touching on their shoulders.
The touching where?
On their shoulders.
Oh, you said the touching down there. I'm like, ooh, I didn't hear this part.
Oh, boy. Uh-oh.
Sorry, you woke me up. I'm sorry.
Down at the end of the bar. That's where I think a lot of that stuff happens. And there's also a lot of residual up there, too. There is, we heard bottle caps, and the owner and his brother, actually, the first night after they bought the bar, the very first night, they were sitting at the bar all by themselves. It wasn't open yet. They were having a drink to celebrate, and kept hearing bottle caps getting thrown on the floor. And every time they'd look, they couldn't find a bottle cap. There was nothing.
Can I ask you something? Do they
Sure.
have like a closed circuit video camera system in that place?
No.
Because what I've noticed about restaurants, some of them do. They have very good camera systems, and that's why you notice when restaurants are haunted, because you catch a lot of that stuff.
Yes, and I don't know if my discussion with them the other night may lead them to do something like that. I think it would be a great idea. We heard at one point, here's another example of that. We heard at one point in the kitchen, silverware getting sort of, you know how you toss your silverware together into a drawer? That's almost what it sounded like. Silverware, and we got it on audio. There's no silverware anywhere that was left out. There was nothing going on in that kitchen that you could see. Okay. It's interesting to me, this place, because they're just one floor in the restaurant. Then there's their basement, and in between is the kitchen. So you go through the back of the bar into the kitchen leads to the basement stairs. It's almost like there are two different worlds in one place. You have the upstairs, which is, and I know there's more activity upstairs. I was just able to concentrate on and hone in on those three spirits, connect with them. But there's more. Bill did see a shadow figure come out of the kitchen at one time. I saw something down at the end of the bar towards the bathrooms. I saw something dark move over that way. There is more activity there, but it seems to be more light-hearted and upbeat. They also, one thing that I think is really nice is that they have pictures of the old hotel there. Oh. They have old pictures of the bar. It's sort of like paying homage to...
Go ahead. Sorry.
Are you all right?
Yeah, I'm fine.
It's sort of like paying homage to what it was. And I think that is a happy thing for them. I think it sort of makes them feel good to know this, that people care and respect the fact that it existed the way it did. Because over the years, you're talking 150 years, so many changes have happened over those years that people and events tend to be forgotten. And that's not always a really good thing, especially for me. I feel like we need to acknowledge that these people existed.
Right.
So so you have your upstairs, you have your basement, and then you have your kitchen, which is sort of caught in between. There have been some sightings of weird melty-faced people in the kitchen. We didn't experience any of that. We did experience a phantom smell in the kitchen that smelled like food cooking, but it hadn't been there earlier, and it just was so strong. It just all of a sudden was there. Now let's talk about the basement.
This is where it gets interesting.
The basement is like a totally different world from the upstairs. As soon as I walked downstairs in the basement, it was sort of like, picture yourself walking through heavy, heavy fog. That's what it felt like to me. As I got to the bottom of the stairs, it was just completely heavy. It was hard to breathe sometimes. When I walked into one room, I felt a little shaky. I had to sit down on the stairs at one point because I felt like something heavy was on my chest. Over the years, there was one room. The basement itself, you go down the stairs and there's a short hallway. To the left is a storage room. And in front of you is a large room. It's all stone down there, masonry stone. I was drawn to the back of the room, not knowing what was going on. I was drawn there, and a lot of times I'll put my hand on an object, and I can sort of feel energy that way. So I went to the back of the room, and I put my hand on the wall, and I could feel a lot of mixture of energy in there, like happy, sad, scared, all that stuff. And Dennis actually pointed out that was where they had a speakeasy at one point in time.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. And now think about that. And this makes a lot of sense to me, why I would feel so many emotions so heavily at one place. You have a speakeasy. You have an illegal drinking establishment with drinking, and who knows if there were drugs. I'm sure there was sex and debauchery going on.
The mob.
There was all kinds of violence.
Right?
Violence,
yep.
Exactly. All in one place for who knows how long that was going on. It was sort of like emotions times 10 going on there. And it made perfect sense to me why I would feel something in that place. There are two other rooms. When you come out of that room and you turn right, there's a very long hallway. There's a room in the middle and a room at the end. The room at the end, I felt okay. But the room in the middle is actually closed off. The owner has closed off that room because people hear screams in there. They hear children in there. They hear different noises in there. He did open it up for us for the investigation. And when I walked in there, immediately I felt like something violent or bad had happened against the back wall. And a lot of times, until after the investigation, I won't know why I felt that way, because I have to kind of look into the story a little bit, which I did, and it made a lot of sense to me, and I'll fill you guys in just a second, but it felt really heavy back there. I did hear 2 knocks in the hallway. The hallway is very active. People are afraid of the hallway itself. And I'll tell you, it is probably one of the heaviest energy feeling places I've ever been in my life. It is so thick and so heavy with energy in there. I did hear 2 knocks out in the hallway, and I found out after the fact that they experienced 2 knocks, not 3 knocks, 2 knocks a lot throughout the entire restaurant, which I thought was interesting, and I did get that on audio as well. I did hear a voice out in the hallway, but it was very, very faint. So long story short, the same couple that died that I feel is upstairs, Mr. and Mrs. White, there was also a third person who died in that same fire, and they died together. And the man who died, they don't know his identity because and you have to remember this was 1910. They don't know his identity because he checked in to the hotel, but he didn't register. So they had no name. And this part just kind of makes me angry in and of itself, but he had a room in the basement. Who puts rooms in the basement of a hotel? There were 20 people in the hotel at the time. 17 made it out. These 3 did not. The way I found this out was because there was an article in the New York Times the next day, and they interviewed a witness the man who actually tried to get them out and couldn't get to them, my thought is that they probably died in that room where there's so much activity down there and there's so much bad energy and I felt so much violence. That's probably where they died. I can't say for sure it is, but all of my, I'm getting goosebumps right now just talking about it, reliving it. All of my feelings tell me that that's what happened. That's where they died. And that may be why we hear screams. That may be why even children's voices, because if there were rooms down there, you would have children down there as well.
Right.
So it's an incredibly active area. I told them last night when I talked to them that they should keep that room closed, that they should not open that room up. That room does not need to be opened up. There's no reason to open it up. They were right in closing it, and it needs to just stay closed.
How did they respond to that, if you don't mind me asking?
They agreed with me totally. They're such nice people, and they've been experiencing this. They've owned the restaurant for a few years now, and they've had so many people experience things there, and they themselves here and there have had experiences. And I told them, I said, you can get somebody to come in and try to clear that. That's beyond my experience. I can clear my studio, I can smudge my studio and make it feel better, but I don't know that I could do what needs to be done there. And I wouldn't even try, because it is an entirely different world down there. There's no demonic activity down there. I didn't really feel anything physically threatening down there. That's not to say that it couldn't happen or it couldn't be there. I didn't really feel that. But there's so much energy and so much sadness and fear and just so many emotions that it's sort of cloudy down there. I asked them, when you get to the bottom of the stairs, it hits you sort of like a wall. And we had a couple experiences down there that I'll get into in a second. But that's where I actually felt like I needed to sit down on the stairs because it was so heavy there. And I asked them last night, I said, do you guys have a lot of activity in that spot? And they're like, oh yeah, the break table at the bottom of the stairs, that whole area. And I said, no wonder you do, because that place is so bad right there, so full of energy that it wouldn't surprise me. And I told them this. They may find that there are some people who have experiences all the time, and there may be some people who don't ever have an experience, and it may have to do with people who might be a little more sensitive and might be a little more open to something like that, because that's where it's going to happen. That's where I think the intelligence lies, in that section of the basement. The rest of it, I'd say about 80% of it down there is just residual. It's just heavy residual that's going to affect people who are open. They were, at one point, they were thinking that maybe down the road they might open their own speakeasy down there. I told them, I don't think so. I really don't think you need to be doing that. He says we can't do it anyways because, we just couldn't work it out. But he did make it into a lounge, an employee lounge for his employees to just sit and hang out, the one room where the speakeasy was. And he said that last week he was sitting down there with one of his employees, and for about 4 minutes, they smelled smoke. They smelled
cigarette smoke?
Soot. No, like a fire for about 4 minutes. And they tried to talk through it and just kind of like ignore it. And then finally they both looked at each other and said, let's go upstairs. So now you've got, speaking of phantom smells, now you've got the smell of a fire. And that kind of confirmed to me even more that I'm probably on the right track as far as where this fire took those lives and how this happened to them.
Right.
I don't know anything else about the other two fires or if anybody else perished. I didn't hear that anybody did. There was one in the 1880s, but fires were very common back then because
everything burned down. Yeah, there was no safety.
Everything burned.
There was no safety.
There was no safety laws. There was nothing, and the fire departments did their best, but they didn't have.
There's another fire. I guess we better go take a look. By the time we get there, it's all gone. Why bother?
Exactly,
right.
It's done.
Yeah.
So it could have taken other people. I don't know. There was one article I found on the 1880s fire that didn't mention any loss, but I don't know anything at all about the third fire. When how, anything. So the downstairs is very, very, very heavy residual, but there is intelligence. At one point, here's the two big ones. These are two things that I've never experienced in my life before. We were at the top of the stairs about to go down into the basement, and Bill saw at the bottom of the stairs what appeared to him to be a white form, a lady in a white dress. Michelle was over there with him. They both saw it. I went over there with them, and they asked me, "Do you see it?" And I could see something white. I had to literally close my eyes and open them 3 times because I wanted to make sure I wasn't hallucinating and seeing something that I shouldn't be seeing. It looked as if it was something trying to form. It was not moving across the floor per se, but it was literally vibrating and shaking in place. It looked like probably about the chest area to the thigh area. It was white. It was somewhat formed. It was formed enough that I could pick up that it was female. And it looked to me like it was truly trying to form. And then it just went away. That is something I've never seen in my life. I don't know that I'll ever see anything like that again. A lot of investigators call apparitions the Holy Grail because that is a big one. And so I'm very thankful that I was able to witness that, even if it was only for, I don't even know how long it was, maybe 5 seconds, 10 seconds. But she was definitely down there forming, and she was intelligent. And it was right in the area where they have all of these things happen. So that was super cool, and that was something that I don't know if I'll ever experience again. And the other one is the one that you yell at me about all the time, but that was what caused our argument. This was what caused our argument, because we are on the same page, but yet we're both stubborn and we both love each other. And so, so this is where the argument came from. I saw, we were downstairs. Dennis has a GoPro with a night vision light on it, and he said to me, "Sandy, there's a black mist about 5 feet in front of me." And I walked towards it because I truly did not feel threatened by it at all. I think that just because it's black, people tend to think that something's going to be, demonic or evil, but as opposed to white like an angel, which something white could be just as demonic as something black. But I didn't feel anything negative. But I did actually disappear into it. You couldn't see me. Dennis said to me, I could hear Dennis. Dennis could hear me. We weren't that far from each other, but he said, "I cannot see you on the camera right now." And it was cold in there, and it was extremely, extremely emotional. My thought on this is that it is the manifestation of a lot of the heavy energy that's going on in that basement. The interesting thing to me, though, that I'm not really sure what I think about it is it seems to move. It's moving. I don't know if it moves through the basement, if it stays in that area but moves. I'm not really sure. But it was something, again, that I've never experienced. I don't know that I ever will. I don't know that I'll ever walk towards something like that again. So you don't have to yell at me anymore. And, but it was a learning experience for me. It was something I'd never experienced before. And I didn't even think about it when I walked towards it because I didn't feel anything bad, which doesn't mean anything sometimes, I guess. But so that was really interesting. So case in point, this place is extremely active, and it's one of the best places that I could have ever been in because so many things happened to me that sort of confirmed my feelings, my abilities, and also taught me things that I have never experienced before. It was a great investigation.
Cool. Sounds like it was, and people can actually watch and see.
Yeah, you can go to Ghost Pubs and Grub on Facebook. That's our page. We have another episode that we did back in the fall for the Rucker Mansion in Utica, New York, and that one is up as well. You can check them both out. We'll have more. COVID kind of did a number on us this year.
Right.
We weren't able to investigate as much as we wanted, but we will have a season 2 hopefully coming out sometime in the fall. But it was great. It was a lot of fun, and it taught me a lot about having confidence in my own abilities and what I can do and what I don't want to do. Because I really don't want to see things not the way that some do.
Right.
So that was my investigation. I was so glad to be able to talk to it and talk to the owners. Thank you. That was a lot of fun.
You've been waiting a while to talk to them, and I know that you had a chance to do that last night. What was it like leading up to it? Because I know that you were kind of stressing out about it a little bit.
Yeah.
What was the lead up? How did you feel after you talked to them?
Well, I think I was very excited to be able to tell them these things, because you can watch a 30-minute episode on your establishment and it still isn't going to show you half of the stuff that's going on.
Right, you've only got 30 minutes to share what happened. There's all sorts of stuff that never makes it to air, you know?
Exactly. And especially finding out after the fact the types of experiences that they and their employees have had and the number of experiences that they've had. I felt like I really owed it to them because I had information that they might be interested in. You know, I can tell them who I think is actually there. And I can tell them why these people might be feeling these things when they go down in that basement. We actually had, I forgot to talk about this quick. We actually had somebody yelling up to us from the basement at one point. Bill and I heard it. It was very clear and very audible. We couldn't make out what he was saying, but we could tell somebody was yelling to us from the basement. Was that residual? I don't know. Was it somebody yelling from the fire? I don't know. But it was fascinating. So I could tell I could tell the owners things that they might want to know. So I was excited about that, but by the same token, I just put the final pieces of the puzzle together the day before. So all of these emotions came flooding back to me, and I'm feeling pain and sadness, and I'm feeling this young couple who now is in this restaurant living their eternity. And I'm feeling that. And so it was very emotional for me. And the owners are great about it because they wanted to know too. They wanted to know what was going on and maybe why it was going on. And I did tell them that they might want to consider putting up some sort of plaque by the pictures to sort of pay homage to the victims of the fires and sort of show them that, hey, we haven't forgotten you. Right. We have the utmost respect for you, because I think they just want acknowledgement. I think they just want attention. They don't want to be forgotten. You know, an intelligent spirit isn't going to move a menu, throw a menu on the floor just because they want to throw a menu on the floor. That's not what that's about. It's about, hey, look, we're here. We're here. Don't forget about us. You know, we want you to acknowledge us. I told them, acknowledge them. When you come in the morning, Mr. and Mrs. White, good morning. It makes a difference. They want respect. They want acknowledgement. So it was a really great meeting with them, and I feel much better now having been able to give them the information. And I sent them a couple articles and some information on Mr. and Mrs. White. So it was really good.
Now, we did get into a fight about this, and
yes.
And I think what we should do, because we're running a little long, is we will talk a little bit about the investigation again next podcast, and we'll talk about the actual gloves off wrestling match that we went through.
I know. And it's so funny because the gloves only come off virtually for us. We only wrestle virtually because you're in Wisconsin and I'm in New York. So it's even funnier to be arguing through Messenger. So we'll talk about that next week. It'll be a lot of fun.
Hopefully.
All right.
Hopefully.
All right. Don't forget that you can find us on any of the platforms where you would find your podcast. Please make sure you leave us a review. That's the only way that we can get the word out about us is by you leaving us a review. You can leave us a review on Facebook, our page, The Sandy and Toddcast. You can also email us at thesandyandtoddcast@gmail.com. We'll have Patreon coming out soon. We have a YouTube channel. Be sure to subscribe to that. A big thanks to Dan Phillips for the music for our podcast.
Thanks, Dan.
Yes, thanks, Dan. You can find him at D_Phillips Music on Instagram or at Daniel Phillips Music on Facebook. And a big shout out to everybody and thank you for supporting us. We're having a blast.
We are. So until next time,
bye.
She's Sandy and I'm Todd. Bye.
How many more miles left in this race? How long it takes, I don't know. In the end, it ain't about the pace. It always ends at the crossroads.